Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to Authentic Black Goddess TV, and also thanks to those of you who are tuned in to my other networks. So, I am Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, your host, and this is your daily vitamin. So, as I told you all, I will be doing something on Black history today and also tomorrow. Okay, so everyone, please go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Please go ahead and like and share the video. Also, subscribe to the channels if you have not done so already. Be sure that you click the notification bell and click the word all so that you're notified each time that I go live. Also, don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur and Instagram at divine_goddess_27, on Twitter at dgoddess27. And you can find me on Patreon at Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur. Okay? Shalom to you, Blackfoot. Thank you for your kind words. You're welcome, Sheriff Beloved. Black, black, black in the house with the queen. That's right, Kajalen. Okay, so with that all being said, Cassandra says, I'm black. Royals and queen, yes. Okay, so hello, Katia, Pimpy Jack, Desmond. Desmond says, spit that fire, queen. Thank you, Desmond. And thank you for your contribution. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Sylvie says, the queen is the real deal, except no substitutes. Often hated, can never be duplicated. Thank you, Sylvia, beloved, for your kind words. Eric says, I'm here, queen. Okay. DB Truth, peace, love, and blessings, queen. And the same to you, beloved. Michael Freeman is black. All right. So, Iyama Bay, Miss Natural Candy J, Silent D, Dan Ruck. All right. I got my hot mods in the house heavy. So, y'all better watch your steps. Okay. So, let's go ahead and get into it. Hello, Desmond Works, Claudette. Nichelle, author, Melbourne, Pearlie, Yusuf, Yezrael. Okay, Melanated Brown, Nakisha Ricks. Anyway, let me go ahead and get started, people. So I'm going to be doing another broadcast after this. I set it for 7 o'clock. Let me change the time on that real quick to like 7:15, just in case I go over just a bit. Okay, with that all being said, and don't forget, as I told you earlier, I'm going to be broadcasting on Queen Ahmadiyyah TV Presents Beyond the Realm. On my paranormal channel tonight, I'm going to be doing the story of Papa Legba, okay, about a white girl who dabbled in the occult, and she considered herself a witch because she practiced Wiccan, but she also bragged on Facebook about summoning the ancient Haitian voodoo deity known as Papa Legba. She said that she summoned him and she'd been scared ever since. She was found dead, and there has been no cause of death listed. Some people say she drowned in the tub, but you know, if you drown, the coroner can tell that you drowned, okay? There was no cause of death listed. Her name is Caitlin, and so we're going to be talking about that. Her name is Caitlin Reston. Okay, like resting in peace, literally. So we're going to be talking about that at 9 o'clock. So please make sure you tune in if you like stories of paranormal activities. I'm going to be giving my insight on that. Now, some of you know that I went live on that broadcast on my old channel when it first occurred. Now, though I download most of my videos, that's one video that I neglected to download, so I lost it. So I'm going to be redoing that on the paranormal channel, okay? With that all being said, let me change this time on this other video from 7 o'clock to at least 7:15. And then we can go ahead and get started, Royals. Okay? All right. Okay. So what I'm going to be focusing on, people, there's many heinous atrocities that have been perpetuated upon us by racist people throughout our time in this country. Okay? The Haitians say the voodoo is real. Yes, it absolutely is real, Swirl Girl. And here's the thing. You can use it for good or bad. It all depends on the intentions of the person. Now, Caitlin was trying to use it for something bad, as I'll get into in that topic. So that all been said, everyone, listen, I'm going to be talking about Black History Month today and tomorrow, as I told you. Now, tonight, I'm going to be focusing on many of the numerous lynchings that have occurred in the divided snakes, okay? So I have put together a PowerPoint. So I'm going to be showing you some things on there, and I'm also going to be reading from some articles, and then I have some footage that I'm going to show you from an interview of a mother of one of the victims, and she says she believes it was absolutely a lynching, although the police ruled it and deemed it a suicide. And there was some very strange things that occurred. So I'm going to go ahead and get into that. Hello, beloveds. I have my son and his girlfriend trying to sneak in here. Clearly, I hear them and see them, okay? So anyway, let me go ahead and get this PowerPoint queued. Let me go ahead and get that queued. Okay. And then I'm going to share my screen so you all can see this. Okay. All right. Tonight we're talking about America's history of racial terrorism. All right. Now, with that all being said, they have talked about many things. Hello, Brandon, Obsidian Blaze, Katia, Davita. Trust me, brother, a white boy caught me on that day 3 years ago, resulting in 4 front teeth being knocked out. The cop who detained me said, I know him. He deserved every bit. Okay, Arthur. Arthur has those hands. Don't y'all forget. Black in the house, High Queen Mods and Rose. Hello, honey 69. Queen don't miss a beat. And you know it, Dervis. Okay, so now with that all being said, let's get into these details. Okay, first I'm going to be talking about Jesse Thornton. Now, Jesse Thornton was a black man who was lynched in Alabama because he failed to call a white man Mr. He failed to call a white man Mr. And the man was a police officer. And, you know, back then it was taboo because, like I told you before, you could not look white people in the eyes. You could not speak to them in a hostile or aggressive manner, even though they may have done it to you. You had to get over on and get out of the street if they were passing by and all of that. So you also had to call them Mr., Mrs., say sir and ma'am. And if you didn't, they took that as you being an uppity nigger or you being disrespectful or whatever. And the cost of that sometimes was actually paid with your life. So that is what happened on June the 21st of 1940 to a black man by the name of Jesse Thornton. Okay? Jesse was a 26-year-old black man. Now, he referred to a passing police officer by his name. Doris Rhodes. That was his name. When the officer, a white man, overheard Mr. Thornton and ordered him to clarify his statement, Thornton attempted to correct himself by referring to the officer as Mr. Doris Rhodes. But the cop was unsatisfied. Okay, the officer hurled a racial slur at Mr. Thornton while knocking him to the ground, then arrested him and took him to the city jail as a mob of white men formed outside. Now, this is what I want you all to pay attention to. You see, the wicked racist demons and devils, you see, they don't have to have a good reason for them to be trying to hurt, harm, kill, or, you know, any black person. All they need is an excuse. So the fact that the man didn't call him Mr. when he was talking to him in passing, this is what resulted in that. And even when he tried to correct himself, oh, that wasn't good enough. And that's why you know what you need to remember is when they go out here and perpetuate their acts of racism against us or kill your family members or any of those things because they're being racist, that's why black people need to stop talking about forgiveness. They don't even forgive you for saying the wrong thing to them, okay? But they want us to forgive them for killing black people. Miss me with all of it, all right? Now let me continue. Now, Jesse was hunted like an animal by a vicious mob. Okay, Mr. Thornton tried to escape and managed to flee a short distance while the mob quickly pursued him. Okay, they pursued him, firing gunshots and pelting him with bricks, bats, and stones. When Mr. Thornton was wounded in the gunfire and eventually collapsed, the mob dumped him in a truck and drove him to an isolated street where they dragged him into a nearby swamp and shot him again. A local fisherman found Mr. Thornton's decomposing vulture-ravaged body a week later at the Patsaliga River near Tuskegee Institute. Okay? Now, I have a picture of the swamp on this PowerPoint, as you can see, where his body was found at. Now, Dr. Charles A.J. McPherson, a local leader in the Birmingham branch of the NAACP, wrote a detailed report on Mr. Thornton's lynching. Now, the NAACP lawyer and future Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall provided the Department of Justice with the report and requested a federal investigation. The department in turn instructed the FBI that they determine whether law enforcement or other officials were actually complicit in the lynching. But there is no record that anyone was ever prosecuted for Mr. Thornton's murder. Because as you know and I know, back then they could kill, and they still can till this day. It didn't even have to be back then in 2021, honey. They can still kill a black person and be granted immunity, and nobody get any jail time. That's what happened back then and can still happen now. Terry says, thank you, Queen, for the Black history. You're welcome, beloved. You are so welcome, and thank you and everyone else for tuning Black in. Now, the vicious lynching of Jesse Washington. Now, this is another Black man. Now, the first was Jesse Thornton, who was 26. This is the tale of a very vicious and heinous lynching that happened to a man by a teenager by the name of Jesse Washington. He was only 17 years old. Now, listen to this BS. Jesse Washington, an African-American 17-year-old farmhand, was lynched in the county seat of Waco, Texas on May the 15th, 1916, in what became a well-known example of racially motivated lynching. Now, Washington was convicted of raping and murdering Lucy Fryer, who was the wife of his white employer in rural Robinson, Texas. He was chained by his neck and dragged out of the county court by observers. He was then paraded through the street, all while being stabbed and beaten before being held down and castrated, a common practice by the racist demons and devils, as I told you, and Dr. Frances Cress Wilson has discussed this numerous of times before her passing. Now, he was then lynched in front of Waco City Hall, and this story came to be known, people, as the Waco Horror, okay? Now, thousands watched and cheered. Now, the crowd that gathered to actually watch and partake and get their thrills and sick fetishes out of watching this young man be murdered, there was over 10,000 people there. Alluring Fire says, imagine how sick of an animal you have to be to do that to a human being. Yes, clearly a devil and a demon. Sylvia says, woo, Lord, to be back in those days, I can see all that, beloved, but I already know, honey, it had to be drastic. Absolutely. Okay? God's wrath is about to come down on those demons. Yes, Louise, it always will. Okay? Now, so over 10,000 spectators gathered in the city square to watch this 17-year-old be lynched. Okay? For a crime that he didn't even do, nonetheless. Now, it goes on to say, over 10,000 spectators, including city officials and police, gathered to watch the attack. There was a celebratory atmosphere among whites at the spectacle of murder, and many children attended during their lunch hour. How do you even have an appetite afterwards after seeing this? So disgusting. Now, members of the mob cut off his fingers and hung him over a bonfire after saturating him with coal oil. He was repeatedly lowered and raised over the fire for about 2 hours. After the fire was extinguished, his charred torso was dragged through the town. A professional photographer took pictures as the event unfolded, providing rare imagery of a lynching in progress. And the pictures were printed and sold as postcards in Waco. Okay? They sold them as postcards. This is how they got their kicks, people. Please pay attention. Now, although the lynching was supported by many Waco residents, it was condemned by the newspapers around the United States. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, hired Elizabeth Freeman to investigate. She conducted a detailed probe in Waco, despite the reluctance of many residents to speak about the event. Freeman concluded that white residents were generally supportive of Washington's lynching. That's because they were racist devils. Anyway, I digress. She also concluded that Washington killed Fryer Now, after receiving Freeman's report on the lynching, NAACP co-founder and editor W.E.B. Du Bois published an in-depth report featuring photographs of Washington's charred body in the crisis, and the NAACP featured his death in their anti-lynching campaign. Now, there was a historical marker put up. Okay, historians have noted that Washington's death helped to alter the way lynching was viewed. The widespread negative publicity helped curb public support for the practice. But it didn't stop it, though, did it? As we can see. Now, in the 1990s and 2000s, some Waco residents lobbied for a monument to Washington's lynching. But this idea failed to garner wide support in the city. On the centenary of the events in May 2016, the mayor of Waco held a formal ceremony to apologize to Washington's descendants and the African American community. A historical marker has been installed to memorialize the lynching. Now, let me say this. Now, though Elizabeth Freeman claims that she did believe that he killed Lucy Fryer, let me just say, obviously, the people concluded later that he didn't because they put up a historical marker. They scarcely would have done that had he actually been guilty. And at the end of the day, you know who I think killed her? I think her husband killed her and blamed it on him because he was the black farmhand who worked there. That's what I believe, okay? But Gotti says, my question is, why is the symbolism of cutting fingers off? You know, that's something that I don't know what the point was for doing it in his death, but it is a known fact throughout the mob or mafia-style killings that if you stole something, they would cut off your fingers for that reason. Now, I don't know why they saw fit. Oh, yes, I do. I'm so sorry. Yes, I do. I remember they cut his fingers off for the simple fact that is part of the body that they would take home as a trophy. Okay, they would cut off fingers or the nose and ears and things like that, and they would take that home for their sick fetishes to have later as memorabilia of the lynching. They would also put the pictures of the dead person's body. They would put those on postcards and send those off to friends and family. So that's what that was all about, clearly. Now, this is some pictures of the charred remains. Okay, this is the tree where they had him hung by a chain. And I want you to think about something, how painful and hideous this absolutely was. Because for one, they hung him by a chain. And as we know, metal is extremely hot when it is around fire. So think about the hot chain being around his neck and how they used it to dangle him down into the fire back and forth. Just pure torture. They also held him down and castrated him before they started hanging him. And let's not forget how they dragged him through the street and they stabbed him and beat him numerous of times. His body was covered and drenched in blood, okay, while they committed all these heinous acts. Okay, that's pictures of the rubble from the tree and stuff that was left afterwards. This are two pictures of his charred remains as he hung from the tree. That's torture. How terrible and disgusting. Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is a story that many people don't even know about. Now, this is a picture of Elizabeth Freeman, the one that the NAACP got to conduct the investigation. Okay. Now, let me pause this PowerPoint for a moment. So that's also heinous, people. Also sick. But these are the things that people have had to go through. These are the things that people have had to go through. Now, let me give you the accounts of a person who went to visit the place in Waco where, in fact, Jesse Washington was killed. This is so many reasons. Hold on. Let me read the chat really quick. Thank you, David, for your contribution. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Also, David, thank you for your contribution from yesterday that I didn't see. And somebody else gave a contribution yesterday that I didn't see either until I went back and did the Lex Play. Lex Play, thank you for your contribution yesterday as well. Okay? Sometimes I don't see it because the chat's moving fast, and I have to catch it on when I watch my video back, the playback. Okay, I was trying to read Silent D's. comment. Okay, this is so many reasons why I never go anywhere alone unless strapped. Absolutely. Take me back in time with my AR-15. I would change history. Arthur, I don't doubt that you would, but if you go, take me with you. Okay? Karen says, I don't know how they live with themselves. Oh, they sleep like babies, no less. Trust me. It's in the DNA of the racists to be devoutly racist and wicked. Trust me. Okay? Reprobate, says Donna. Absolutely. I'm hoping it happens immediately because I'm tired. It's difficult every day to see and hear this happening to our people. Yes, it is, Gary. Absolutely is. Melanated Brown says, damn, damn, damn. May all involved suffer a much greater and repulsive fate. Absolutely. Sylvia says, see, this is the real Black history here, not that fake BS Black history they teach in American history class. Absolutely. Okay. So with that all being said, let me get back to the topic at hand. Now, as I was telling you all this, okay, this is the account of a person about the story that I just told you about Jesse Washington. This is the account from a man who actually went to Waco to visit the site where Jesse was lynched and to gather facts and history about what happened. Okay. It's called Behind the Courthouse. This section is called Behind the Courthouse. Now, he says, start at the back door of the magnificent stone courthouse, where a wave of white men dragged Jesse Washington into the alley, tearing off his clothes as they went. Walk 65 steps over the red alley bricks on North 5th Street, where the swelling mob paused to cinch a chain around Jesse's neck. Then cross 5th and turn right and take the short walk to Washington Avenue. Thousands of people massed there to partake in the killing of the 17-year-old farmhand. As Jesse was pulled down the wide street that cruelly shares his last name, they attacked him with knives, bricks, shovels, and clubs. Blood covered Jesse's dark skin. It was almost noon on May the 15th of 1916. With the Texas heat climbing into the 80s and the Waco harbor had begun. He says, I can feel the boiling bloodlust of the mob on a cool night in April as I retrace the final steps of Jesse Washington's life. I've come to Waco to explore the meaning of this century-old atrocity, to probe beneath the eerie coincidence of sharing a name with one of the most famous lynching victims in U.S. history. I first saw a photo of Jesse's remains nearly 20 years ago and delved into the story from afar. After being convicted of rape and murder of Lucy Fryer, a white farmer's wife, he was then dismembered, hanged, and burned as more than 10,000 people watched, including the police chief and the mayor. Then he was dragged behind a horse until his head flew off. No one was prosecuted for those crimes, but international publicity of such public brutality helped galvanize the anti-lynching movement and solidify the influence of the recently formed NAACP. And that's another thing. After he was dead from them burning him and lynching him, they then tied his remains to the back of a horse and drug it through the street until his head came off. Clearly overdoing it, right? Just doing too much. Now, a decade ago, I watched indignantly as efforts to commemorate Jesse's lynchings were stymied. His lynching were stymied by the white power structure in Waco. More recently, I pondered the parallels with recent killings of unarmed Black males that exploded into national prominence. Above all, I yearned to confront the city in person. Now I stand on the corner of Washington and 5th, nighttime spotlights illuminating the courthouse's stained white walls, deserted streets cutting through acres of empty parking lots, and I feel the weight of history and hate. So there you have it. Such a sad tale. How the F was this legal? Please mail try me. I'm begging you to try me, says Pseudo Africano Mammy. It wasn't legal, but you know what? They were Mayo and they said so. So they did whatever they wanted, whether it was legal or not. This is what we do know. That's why they did. That's what they did to James. I forgot his last name in Texas. They dragged his body that was tied to the back of a truck. Yes, that was James Byrd Jr. Okay. And I believe he was 41 years old, something like that. And they did that in Jasper, Texas. Yes, they did. They drug him until his head was decapitated from his body. Wicked devils. And he thought these white men were his friends. You see, they stopped and offered him a ride as he was walking home. 1998 is when that occurred. Okay. Bungani says most Texas, especially the small towns, I won't go alone or unarmed. Absolutely. Okay. So now let's move along to the next story. And this is the story of a 1988 lynching that happened to a young black man by the name of Michael Donald. And this is called the lynching that bankrupted the Alabama KKK. It's also said to be the last lynching that happened in America. Now, I want y'all to pay attention to that. They say it's the who now? Oh, yes, they said this is the last lynching that happened in America. It happened in 1981, and we know good and darn well there have been plenty more lynchings since then. But here's the thing, people. Because the KKK had to pay out money, maybe that's why now they call these suicides. Okay? Please pay attention. Please pay attention. Now, on the night of March 21st, 1981, a cross crackled and burned on the lawn of the Mobile County Courthouse. The Ku Klux Klan's grim protest of the outcome of a local murder trial. It was just the beginning of the terror that would take place that night. Now, the cross burned out, but the Klan's anger sure didn't. Later on that night, two men roamed Mobile looking for a black man to kill. They found him too, 19-year-old Michael Donald. Before the night was through, Donald had been murdered and his body hung from a tree. Now, in the 20th century, it was a 20th century lynching in the most brutal sense of the word. And thanks to a landmark civil lawsuit by Michael's mother, Beulah May Donald, it would end up the last. That's a lie. Sure wasn't the last. Now, as sociologists Stuart Emery Tolnoy and E.M. Beck explained in their book, A Festival of Violence, Michael Donald was different from some lynching victims in that he was not accused of committing a crime or a thought to have breached racial etiquette. So he wasn't accused of a crime and he wasn't thought to have breached any type of, rules or policies or whatever you want to call it. I'm male and I say so BS. Instead, he was killed because the Klan members were furious that the second trial of Josephus Anderson, a black man accused of murdering a white policeman, had been declared a mistrial when the jury could not reach a verdict. So that's why they were mad, okay? This is what they do. You see, when one of their people is killed and they don't get justice, you think they go out there and protest? Oh, no, they don't. They go out there looking for them a black person to take it out on. And that's what they did in this case. Please pay attention. Now, the Klansmen, Tolnoy and Beck write, they write that this meant that a black man could kill a white man with impunity. Pay attention, because this is what the police and other white people do to black people. They said when this happened and it was a mistrial and nobody got convicted, to them, this meant that a black man could kill a white man with impunity so long as there were blacks on the jury. Okay? Sally D says, come with the fire, okay? Queen, Queen, they looking for a nigga. Yes, absolutely, Davida. So they go on to say that they felt that a black man could kill a white man with impunity so long as there were blacks on the jury. So Donald was killed as a reprisal against the black community and to confirm the power of the Ku Klux Klan in South Alabama. See, they didn't go out there marching and protesting and holding up signs, talking about, please give us some justice. No justice, no peace. We already know there's no justice and no peace, okay? We don't need anybody to continuously shout that. That's not what the white folk do. Furious about the verdict, Klan members Henry Francis Hayes and James Tiger Knowles chose Michael Donald at random, chased him down, beat him brutally, then strangled him to death. They showed him off at a party at the house of Klan elder Benny Hayes at his house that night before hanging his body from a tree. This is what they did. Okay? This is what they did. DB Truth said, tell it, Queen, I'm jumping up and down. Okay, devils always find different words to use to justify evil, lynch, and suicide. One of these days, they're going to feel everything they have done. Yes, absolutely. Karma always comes back around. Don't forget anyone's address. So this is what they did when they felt that they didn't get justice. And that's why Black people need to stop forgiving them, because clearly they don't forgive us. Okay? They don't forgive anyone. All they do is go out there and commit their heinous atrocities and all those things. And then that's it. That's all. Now, Beulah Mae Donald, Michael's mother, was devastated, echoing the decision of Mamie Till, whose son Emmett was killed in one of the 20th century's most appalling hate crimes. Now, Beulah insisted on an open casket funeral, and as it became more and more evident that the city of Mobile would not bring her son's killers to justice, she went on a mission to find it for him. Though Mobile police knew the Klansmen had murdered Michael Donald, they dragged their feet because they were uncode people. Please pay attention. They knew who did it, and they knew it wasn't anything other than a lynching and a hate crime. They knew who did it, but they weren't saying anything, okay? They took 3 obviously uninvolved men into custody. 3 people who didn't have anything to do with it. I'm pretty sure they knew it's what they're saying. Then released them without charges and did little else to move the case forward. See, they did that, in my opinion, to pretend they were trying to conduct an investigation. Okay? Now, these days, they don't even do that. They go to the scene of the crime, see a Black person swinging from a tree and say, oh, it's a suicide. Clearly, they killed themselves. No foul play here. Nothing to see, folks. Go on home. Isn't that what they do now? Police miss me with all of it. Now, Beulah worked with Mobile's Black community to organize local rallies that caught the attention of Jesse Jackson and other national civil rights figures. The FBI got involved, but nearly closed its investigation entirely. Okay? Beulah pressured them to press forward. I saw the movie based on Michael Donald's lynching. It was so sad. I'm sure it was. I didn't see the movie. Now, slowly the wheels of justice began to grind. In 1983, police arrested Henry Francis Hayes, the son of Alabama's second highest ranking Klan official, and Knowles, who quickly confessed the crime to the FBI. Knowles was the star witness in Hayes' trial, and both men were convicted and sentenced. Knowles to life in prison for violating Michael's civil rights, Hayes to death for murder. It was the first time since 1913 that a white man was given the death sentence for killing a Black man in Alabama. But Donald didn't think her son's killers should be the only people held accountable for Michael's murder, you see. In 1984, 3 years after her son's lynching, well, she got in contact with Morris Dees, a civil rights attorney, who co-founded the Southern Poverty Law Center in 1971. Dees had a track record for suing the KKK and understood its inner workings. See, the murderers, he felt, had been given their marching orders by the KKK and were acting as a matter of institutional policy. Now, they filed a federal wrongful death lawsuit against the United Klans of America, one of the country's largest Klan organizations, that sought to hold the organization and its members liable for murder. I don't know why y'all Black people aren't doing this today when they go out here killing Black folk, unarmed and all of that. By then, the Klan had terrorized African Americans in Alabama for over a century. The United Klans of America in particular had been linked with some of the most notorious Klan crimes of the 20th century, most notably the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. The bombing, which killed 4 young girls, was carried out in retaliation for Black activism in the city. It was one of the civil rights movement's most devastating and galvanizing moments. I want y'all to pay attention to something. Why did they say that they bombed that church and killed those poor 4 little Black girls? It was carried out in retaliation for activism. Why do you think those activists down in Ferguson are all dead? Like at least 6 of them. And one of them's son found lynched in the backyard. And they said it was a suicide, of course. Well, alleged lynching. Why do you think those things all happen? Retaliation is what they look for. They go out and commit vigilantism, okay? They become vigilantes. They don't go out there protesting and trying to join hands and sing "We Shall Overcome." They don't go out there and try to be nonviolent like Dr. King was promoting and telling black folk to do. That's what they don't do. That's what they don't do. That's what they don't do. That's what black people do. And then on top of it, to add insult to injury, black people forgive them for the wicked things they do. You don't have to forgive them. Who keeps telling black people that? Who keeps telling black people that? Does it even tell you in the Bible that God forgives everybody? Because God clearly doesn't. Because if he did, why does the Bible tell us that God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? I'm just curious. Why does it say that God gave Samson the strength to destroy the Philistines? I'm just wondering. I'm just saying. Why does it say that vengeance is mine, saith the Lord? I'm just wondering. Please make it make sense, black people. If God himself doesn't forgive everybody for their sins, why do we think that we have to? You don't have to forgive people. If somebody wants to forgive people, then let them. But we don't have to. It's not a must. Okay? I'm just saying. It's not a must. Because we don't ever see them forgiving us for when we do something crazy. All right? So one of them. We don't ever see them forgiving us. Marching in a circle. Absolutely. Okay? Please listen with all of that. That's all they're doing is marching in circles. People like Al Sharpton, Tamika Mallory, my son, all they're doing is leading black people around, following your own tails. That's all they're doing. Thank you, Anthony, for your contribution. Peace, love, and blessings to you. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and act like savages and act crazy and go out there attacking people like they do. But what I am telling you is this. You don't have to be so forgiving. And you know what black people need to do? You don't have to be violent like them. But what you can do and stop giving them your darn money. I told you the only thing the devils, the racists care about is blood and revenue. You can hurt their pockets. They don't like to lose their money. And if we didn't support their businesses, they wouldn't have any. You think they would? And even if they did, they wouldn't be making anything but peanuts. Okay? Because it is nigger and black folk who go out here and spend all their cash that they work for on those name brand items, as I told you numerous of times. Vanity slaves no less and fools the second. Shall I continue? Now, with that all being said, by then the Klan had terrorized numerous of African Americans in Alabama for over a century. Bombed churches and everything. Now, Donald's civil lawsuit worked. Because in 1987, the Donald family was awarded a $7 million judgment against the United Klans of America and several of its members. The all-white jury deliberated just for 4 hours. She says, I'm glad justice was done. That's what Donald told an Associated Press reporter after the verdict was handed down. She says, money don't mean a thing to me. It won't bring my child back, but I'm glad they caught the guilty and brought them to court. See, let me tell you something. This is what a good civil rights attorney does. Not Lee Merritt, not Benjamin Crump, in my opinion. I don't feel like they're the good ones to go to, because though they'll get you a bag, she got the killers sentenced to life and death in a court of law. See, that's what's supposed to happen. Now, that is justice. And after you've done all that, then you hit those pockets and break them. That's what you do. That's how you handle justice, okay? That's what you do to them. Yep, Michael Donald's mother won the civil lawsuit against the Klan and bankrupted the Klan first time in history. Yes, okay? That has ever been done. Absolutely. And so with that all being said, do y'all think that maybe this has something to do with the reason they love to call hate crimes, lynchings, suicides? Because they don't want to come up off those millions? I'm just saying. But you know what? Whether they call them, label them lynchings or not, you could still sue them. You could still sue them. You certainly can, because I want you to pay attention to something. Remember when OJ, when they had him on trial for killing Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, and OJ was acquitted, the family of the victims still sued him, right? They still sued him. They still sued their behinds. But let me say this. At the end of the day, black folk need to pursue justice, as in having them put in prison. Okay? That's what you need to do, and stop spending your money with people who can't stand you. I don't know why black people continue to make oppressors rich When oppressors take that same money that we have spent from our community giving to theirs, they take that same money and use it to perpetuate all kinds of racist acts upon you. And why, oh, why do Black people continue to complain about not being able to go and join their country clubs, to eat in some of the restaurants, to live in their neighborhoods? Listen, why would you want to live in their neighborhoods if they don't want you there? I don't know why Black people ever even fought for Brown versus the Board of Education. So you can go to school with white people who don't even want your kids there, spit in your face, talk about you, fight you, beat you, call you all kinds of Negroes and all kinds of stuff. And then you have to get escorted to school by the National Guard and all of those things. Why did they even want to go to school with those people so desperately? I'm glad you asked them. I'll tell you why. They wanted to go and they wanted to be around those people who clearly didn't want them. They wanted to force themselves on white people, just like many coons and Sambos and plantation mammies and coonish hens still do to this very day. Because some Black people just don't think being Black is good enough. Some Black people want to sit amongst the table with those who engage and uphold a system of wannabe white supremacy. Some Black people just have to do it. So if you tell them no and you shut the door on them, you know what's so amazing to me? That some Black people will fight and scratch and beg and plead just to be accepted by people who hate them. Tell the truth, Queen. Thank you for Audubon. I think that's your name. Peace, love, and blessings to you, and thanks for your contribution. But let me tell you something. They will fight for these things. They will fight for them so hard, but they will not fight at all for the killings and lynchings and castrations and all of the above of unarmed Black people to stop. They won't fight for that. Please pay attention. They won't fight for that. You know, it's all good and dandy that Dr. King and all the people who were in the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks and all of them, it's all good that they boycotted for 381 days. But I want you to think about why they did that. They did it so they can get a seat on the front of the bus. They did it so they can sit down on the bus. They did it so they can ride with the white folk on buses. But do you know that at the same time they had Black bus companies? And those went out of business because they started riding with the white folks. I mean, how crazy is it? Now, during the whole time that they were boycotting, many Black buses or bus companies, many white bus companies went out of business. Okay? And they couldn't have that because they didn't want to lose that revenue. So that's why they let them go ahead and start sitting where they wanted to on the bus. But my thing is, why was it so important and beneficial to our people to sit on a bus with people who hate you? They could have fought that hard and boycotted that long for something that was lucrative. They could have asked for more things. Why didn't they ask for reparations back then? They could have done all that for reparations. And then you know what? It's not too late. Black people could do that now. But the sad thing is, Black people are not going to get together and do that. All Black people want to do is get together and go out there and clout chase by protesting and this and that and holding up signs and waving them and this, that, and the third. It's not going to get you anything. This is why we need mental health therapy. Absolutely, Desmond. Thank you for your insight into the topic and your contribution. Peace, love, and blessings to you. So with that all being said, Black people need to wake up. We should not be begging for people who don't want us around to have us around. Okay? That's crazy. How much sense does it make? If somebody doesn't want to be bothered with me, I'm not going to want to be bothered with them. So anyway, let me continue. So with that all being said, now, Donald won her civil suit. Now, it was a historic blow against the Klan and a fatal one in the United Klans of America. Instead, the organization, which the Klan could not afford to pay Donald and her family. They say instead the organization gave the Donalds the deed to its headquarters in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, worth $225,000. That's some bullshit because they should have given her money. Oh, they had it. And if they didn't have it, don't they always contribute and donate and all that stuff to each other to get the money up? Please. Individual Klan members had to pay, as the New York Times Magazine, Jesse Kornbluth reported at the time of the verdict. Some members' wages were garnished. Oh, that's good. They got those wages garnished, okay? And their property seized. And evidence from the civil trial was then used to indict Benny Hayes and his son-in-law. Good. Now, Benny Hayes' first criminal trial ended in a mistrial after he collapsed in the courtroom. He died during the second trial. Well, that's good too. Now, ultimately, Donald's refusal to back down changed the options for the victims of hate crimes and their families, but successfully arguing that the Klan had agency over its individual members' actions. These established legal precedent that is used to fight the actions of other hate groups in the court today. And the lawsuit also discouraged other Klan hate crimes. You hear this, right? Are y'all listening? We done found something out just from me doing this report. It says the lawsuit also discouraged other Klan hate crimes. No, they still commit hate crimes, trust and believe. But what it really discouraged is the police labeling their hate crimes as hate crimes. Okay? Can you tell that? All right? This is why they tell us that lynchings are suicides so quick before they gather any evidence, before they even get any shred of information. Chicago News 101 says, well deserved. Thank you, Chicago News. Thank you for your insight into the topic, your kind words, and for your contribution. Peace, love, and blessings to you. So this is why. In my opinion, this is absolutely why now we get to the bottom of some things. You see why it pays to study and read and research our own history? Because it's clearly saying the Klan went bankrupt down there in Alabama. They had to get their checks garnished. They had to give up property, even their own Klan business or Klan property and all of that. And they couldn't have that happening again ever. Because just think about all the hate crimes that have occurred since then. And if every black person, it was deemed a hate crime and every black person sued them, okay? DB True says, you own it, Queen. Thank you. So if that were the case, they wouldn't have a dime. And they know it. So they're not going to call it hate crimes. They're just going to say it's suicide. Please pay attention. Now, Beulah Mae Donald died in 1988, just a year after the historic verdict was handed down. They say she was the rock on which the entire challenge to the Klan was ultimately built, says her attorney, Michael Figures. This is what he told Ebony's Marilyn Marshall. She never backed down. She just stayed there. Okay? So anyway, let me go back to the PowerPoint because I want to show you all Michael Donald. Let me share my screen. Okay, Michael Donald lynched in 1981 in Mobile, Alabama. This is him right here. This is a picture of him before his death, and this is him as he hung from the tree where they left his body. Now, this is a picture of the next young man we're going to be discussing. His name is Lennon Lacy. Lennon Lacy was 17 years old. And people, so these suicides are really lynchings. That means the police are doing it. I'm just saying, hashtag nepotism. Let me tell you something. We can't conclusively prove that they're lynchings, but we know what they look like, right? We know what lynchings look like. I'm just saying. And when is the last time any of us knew or know a black person who wants to hang themselves, let alone from a tree? I'm just saying. In my opinion, they are lynchings. I can't confirm it, but that's my opinion. And that's many black people's opinions. Who hangs himself from a tree? Please make it make sense, okay? Now, as I said, this is Lennon. Hold on. As I was saying, this is Lennon Lacy, 17 years old. On August the 29th of 2014, this was just a few years ago, people, not even a decade ago. August the 29th of 2014, and the white woman in the picture, well, that's his older girlfriend who was supposed to be a cracked out prostitute, age 32, that he was dating, okay? Now, he was found dead hanging from the frame of a swing set in the center of a Mobile home community. Another one found in Mobile, okay? Pay attention. The death was initially ruled suicide. I'm sorry, he was in Mobile, North Carolina, not Alabama. Now, the death was initially declared a suicide by North Carolina's chief medical examiner, but Lacy's family believed that he had been lynched, just as I do. Now, let's talk about this. Let's delve into the story of Lennon Lacy. And then I'm going to show you some footage of his mother and what she had to say on an interview. The strange death of Lennon Lacy, another lynching mistaken for suicide? That's the question they're asking. Is this another lynching mistaken for suicide? They're never mistaken for suicides. As far as I'm concerned, in my opinion, they're just deemed suicides. It's no mistake. Now, on the Monday morning of August 29th, the body of Lennon Lacy was found hanging from a noose fastened to a swing set at a trailer park in the small eastern North Carolina town of Bladenboro, about a half a mile from his family's home, a 17-year-old African-American junior and football player at West Bladen High School. Lacy was last seen leaving the house around 10:30 p.m. that night, the previous evening, to take a walk, as he often did. A 911 call came in at 7:25 a.m. the next day on a Friday. Someone called and said, "I need EMS." A woman who got physically ill during the conversation. She was one make the call. She says, "I have a man hanging from a swing set at Bladen Rental Properties." Now, the dispatcher told the caller to cut down the person, to see if he was breathing. He wasn't. The call ended with the dispatcher sending help as the distraught woman tried to loose the body. Now, the initial investigation into the death conducted by a State Bureau of Investigation team working under the direction of local district attorney quickly concluded that Lacy's death was a suicide. Too quickly, according to the North Carolina NAACP. They said it was too quickly. Now, the civil rights group had gotten involved in the case at the request of the Lacy family, who found it difficult to believe Lennon committed suicide. They said he was excited about playing his first varsity football game on the very day that his body was discovered. They bristled over investigators' claim that he was suicidally depressed and say that he was just experiencing normal grief over the recent death of his great uncle. There are also questions about why, if the teen were going to kill himself, why he would do so at a mostly white trailer park. Please make that make sense. Now, the NAACP questioned whether the Lacy case is yet another example or instance of what it calls quick call suicides. See, that's what they call it when you just go on the scene and you don't even do an investigation, collect no DNA, check the ground above the body to see if there's any footprints you can gather or anything, and you just quickly say it's a suicide. Quick call suicides. That's what they call it. So they said it was suspicious hanging deaths of Black men, most of them, especially in the South, that were immediately classified as suicides without extensive investigations, despite evidence that foul play may have been involved. So they're just lying to your face 9 times out of 10, if you ask me. Now, that week, the SBI said it had addressed all viable leads in the case, but that it would still investigate any new information that it got. They say there was a rush to say suicide. That's what the North Carolina NAACP president, Reverend William Barber, said at a press conference in Raleigh a month after, to announce the group had called the U.S. Department of Justice to get involved in the case. He said, "Questions remain. Have they been thoroughly investigated? If not, then why?" Now, the group planned at that time to hold a march in Bladenboro on December the 13th to draw attention to the case. And if federal authorities agreed to join the probe, the march would be a celebration. If not, the event would honor Lacy. So they wanted to know, the family especially wanted to know, whose belts and shoes was he wearing? Because listen to this. As part of an effort to find answers to some of the questions about the teen's death, the NAACP retained the services of independent medical pathologist Dr. Christina Roberts of Hernando, Florida, to review the final report of the North Carolina medical examiner, Dr. Deborah Radish, who ruled the death asphyxia by hanging based on autopsy findings and information given her by investigators. Now, Roberts' report was critical of actions of the law enforcement officials involved in the case and some of the conclusions that they seemed to have drawn. Lacy showed no signs of being suicidal. While Lacy was sad about his great uncle's passing, he did not express any desire to hurt himself or to take any action suggesting he was suicidal, such as giving things away. And he did not write a suicide note or send any kind of goodbye message. In fact, the night before his body was found, Lacey told an employer of the funeral home where his great uncle's services were held how hard he had worked to improve his grades in order to make the football team, and that he was finally being rewarded with a chance to play. Does that sound like somebody who's trying to kill themselves? Now, the belts used to make the noose did not belong to Lacey. See, someone took a couple of belts and strung them together in order to make that noose. The noose was fashioned from a black canvas belt that was tied end to end to a blue canvas belt with a loop created through the D-type ring. Neither of the belts belonged to Lacey. And then they say the mechanics of the hanging were also puzzling. They say one end of the swing set had a climbing platform attached. The noose was reportedly tied to the supporting crossbeam. It appeared to be a 2x6, and then fed through a metal grommet that was screwed into the wood. This grommet was 22 by 5 inches away from the platform. Now, Leonard was 69 inches tall. The height of the crossbeam to the ground was 90 inches tall. And in a photo provided, his brother, who is 6'4", could not reach up and touch the beam. There were no swings on this swing set to act as a step to reach the beam, or to aid as a step for him to reach the beam. There was no item present at the scene that Leonard could have stood on, that he could have applied the noose and then kicked away. The only other way to reach the beam and grommet, therefore, had to be from the climbing platform. No measurements were available at the time for the noose, but it did not appear long enough to have been tied around the beam and then fed through the grommets and still allow a large enough loop for him to be able to place it over his head. The side structure of the platform was rather small, like a small square that was further obstructed by the V-shaped vertical supports of the swing. Now, Roberts also noted that the person who called 911 said she was going to cut the noose and get Lacey's body down. The photographs from the scene showed that the belts were tied together with a single cut to each at the tie point. They say the other free ends of the belts were completely intact and had no secondary cuts. They say only a very short piece of the belt extended past the tied area and could not have been tied at the crossbeam. Also to note that when meeting with Dr. Radish, she stated that when she examined the belt, she thought some portion of it must be missing because there was no secondary cut in the belt. Now, Roberts continued. He said Lee weighed 207 pounds and was reportedly completely suspended, literally hanging in the air. It was very unlikely that a female could lift his body weight, supported for a prolonged period of time, to untie the belt. So the person that called, though the dispatcher told her to cut down the body and see if he was breathing, she couldn't have done that by herself. Clearly, there had to be some other people there with her. He was 207 pounds. Now, what woman do you know can lift 207 pounds from a high area, and then especially when they're dead weights? Please pay attention. So they go on to say that also, as she did not have anything to stand on, she would have to have been well over 6'6" to accomplish this from the ground. Note also that funeral home personnel stated that it took 3 men to move Lennon while making preparations. Okay? Shamir said, speak on it, Queen. Thank you, beloved. Now, Lacey was found wearing shoes that were not his own. When Lacey left his home for the last time, he was wearing gray athletic shoes in a size 12. The local medical examiner reported that at the death scene, Lacey was wearing white sneakers without laces. Now, who goes walking, people, with shoes with no shoelaces? 2 sizes too small, okay? Because law enforcement photographs show that there were a size 10.5 shoes, but he wore a 12. Please pay attention. So I had a size and a half small. But Lacey's body was shoeless when it arrived at the medical examiner's office. Radish told Roberts that she asked the SBI about the shoes, and they said it had been explained and they would not elaborate. Now, he went from not having on his own shoes to having on shoes a size and a half too small with no laces. But when he got to the coroner's office, there was no shoes. So what happened to the second pair? Also strange. Now, Roberts wrote that Rodish told her it was not the usual practice for police to remove clothing from the body before transport. No, it wasn't usual. Could they have removed those shoes because they didn't want anybody getting DNA off of them to find out who the shoes really belong to? I'm just wondering. Now, they go on to say Till's murder. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I skipped something. Okay, Barbara noted that Lacey's body was found one day in 59 years after the murder of Emmett Till, a 14-year-old African-American youth from Chicago, while he was visiting relatives in Mississippi. Till was tortured and killed after reportedly flirting with a white woman. Now, Till's murder was part of the United States' long history of lynchings, vigilante killings, mostly of African Americans, used to enforce white supremacy and Jim Crow segregation after the end of slavery. Between 1882 and 1968, more than 3,400 African Americans were lynched in the United States, according to statistics from the Tuskegee Institute archives. More of those lynchings, 539, took place in Mississippi, followed by Georgia with 492. In North Carolina, there were at least 86 lynchings of African Americans during that period. So the images of a black boy or black man hanging from a rope are etched in the souls of all of us who know the history of this country. Yes, they are. And that's why they can miss us when they talk about suicides, because we're not stupid. Okay? Well, most of us anyway aren't stupid. Now, in the letter asking the U.S. Attorney Thomas Walker to get involved with the Lacey investigation, the North Carolina NAACP referred to possible race-based animus toward Lennon and his family by some of their neighbors. They say the group declined to detail that claim during that month's press conference, saying only that it had been passed along the information to authorities. But after Lacey's death, Atlanta-based sports blogger Jamie Walker wrote about playing high school football in Bladensboro against the backdrop of a Confederate flag that flew in the neighboring yard. And just a few years before Lacey died, a neighbor of the family was ordered by police to take down signs from his yard that said, "Niggers, keep out." So that's one of Lacey's neighbors had, a sign that said, "Niggers, keep out." And that was in his yard. It's bold with their racism. Now, adding to the intrigue surrounding Lacey's death is the fact that he had been in a relationship with a 31-year-old white woman who lived nearby. Lacey also attended a multiracial church, and Barbara reported that there are people in the community who have raised questions about these things. Now, the unsettling thought that lynchings may still occur. That Lacey died by hanging after being involved with a white woman connects his death to several others documented by filmmaker Keith Beauchamp in a 2012 investigation discovery show titled The Injustice Files. I used to love that show. It's called The Injustice Files, at the end of a rope. Now, the show examined 4 suspicious hanging deaths of black men that were all ruled suicides, but that many believed were in fact murders. The entire episode is not available online, but the clips of the show are. Now, Beauchamp said at the time of the episodes airing that he hoped it would be a huge awakening for many who will have to confront the unsettling thought that lynchings may still occur in this country. One of the cases that Beauchamp examined took place in New York State in 2006 after Chef Ezel Parrots of Glen Falls had been missing for 14 months. His body was found hanging more than 30 feet up in a tree in the woods. His family and friends find it unlikely that a 61-year-old man could climb so high in a tree to hang himself. Miss us with that, okay? A friend of his reported that there had been tensions in the community because of Parrots' relationship with white women, and that the letters KKK had been carved in a tree in his yard. That all being said, excuse me, black men, why do y'all still crave Becky and Karen? Do you see where it can get you? Someday, hopefully you'll wake up. Let me continue. The other 3 cases Beauchamp profiled occurred between or below the Mason-Dixie line. In 1986, the body of 19-year-old Keith Warren was found hanging from a tree near his home in Silver Spring, Maryland. His death was ruled a suicide without an autopsy. They didn't even do an autopsy before they said that was a suicide, which forensic experts say should always be done in suicide cases. Now, an EMT called to the scene has said he thought it was a lynching also because of the elaborate rope configuration. okay, which is unusual for a suicide, and because there was nothing for Warren to step off of to suspend himself. In addition, his family discovered from crime scene photographs that he was wearing clothing and shoes that were not his own. Two of the cases profiled took place in the one-time lynching hotbed of Mississippi. One night in early January of 2003, a 23-year-old man by the name of Nick Naylor of rural Kemper County, Mississippi, left his home to walk his dogs. The dog later returned, but Naylor did not. He was eventually found hanging from a dog leash in an oak tree on the property of a hunting club. Now, I remember that. Now, during the search for his body, one of the members of the hunting club told his family that maybe he caught that early morning train. What they understood to be a code for a lynching. That's what they say. They say he caught the early morning train. They're talking about a lynching. Now, the other case documented by Beauchamp, the death of Raynard Johnson in Kokomo, a rural county in Mississippi, a rural community in Mississippi's Marion County, has striking similarities to Lacey's. Both involve 17-year-old high school boys, football players who dated white women. Johnson had experienced harassment as a consequence of his relationships. Relatives of a white woman Johnson had dated chased him off their property and threw bottles at him when he went back to pick her up for a date. Now, just so you all know, you do know that they said that about Ahmaud Arbery. You know, while they told us he was jogging, clearly he wasn't jogging. He had on tennis shoes and shorts, right? Not shorts you were jogging either. So there were some rumors that Ahmaud was dating a white girl who lived in that neighborhood, and that's why they killed him. I'm just saying those are rumors. So anyway, on the evening, okay, yeah, they said he was harassed as the consequence of his relationships. Relatives of a white woman Johnson had dated chased him off of their property and threw bottles at him when he went to pick her up for a date. Now, on the evening of June 16, 2000, Johnson was home watching basketball on TV when he stepped outside around 9:30 p.m. His father returned home a short time later to find his son's body hanging from a pecan tree near the house. The sheriff's deputies who investigated immediately ruled the death a suicide. But people who knew Johnson questioned that. For one thing, the family noted Johnson had been looking forward to the community's big Juneteenth celebration that would take place the day after his death. Not the behavior you would expect from a person who intended to kill himself. Also, a neighbor reported seeing a man in a pickup in a dark car parked outside her house and conferred before driving toward the Johnson house the night before Raynard's death. Now, she said they returned the night of his death, parked their vehicles, and walked down the road toward the Johnson property, and Johnson's brother reported hearing intruders in the woods at the edge of the family's property, okay, on the two nights before Raynard's death, at one point, even shooting his gun into the woods to scare them off. Now, but investigators never spoke to him about it, he says. So they did an investigation, but they didn't even talk to the brother? Oh, okay. Please make that make sense. Now, in addition, Johnson was hung by a belt that was not his own, just like Lacey. And there are questions about the mechanics. Johnson's case involved a partial hanging as he was suspended so low that he could have stopped the asphyxiation by simply standing up, which raises the possibility that he was incapacitated and then hung. Beauchamp explores two theories of possible incapacity for which there is some evidence that Johnson was first either tasered or suffocated with a plastic bag and then suspended. Something else that the Lacey and Johnson cases have in common is the involvement of civil rights leaders. Following Johnson's death, the Reverend Jesse Jackson and the Mississippi NAACP called for a federal investigation and organized a march to draw attention to the case. There they go with that marching again. But 14 years after the incident and more than 2 years after Beauchamp's documentary aired, Johnson's death is still considered a suicide, while unanswered questions about the case linger. There is still hope among Lacey's family and friends that the North Carolina NAACP's efforts to apply moral pressure to law enforcement authorities would lead them to seek out and share more answers in the still open case, and ultimately to prevent another suspicious death from haunting a family in the community. That was in 2014. And they said at the time, they said, we hope we would actually pray that it was not a lynching, Barbara said. That was a strange prayer for us, to actually pray that it was just a suicide. So I'm going to conclude this right here, people. Even though this is not the end, NAACP is full of shite. They not going to do nothing. No, they never have. They're not going to. And we know who they were founded by, okay? So we already know what time it is. With that all being said, listen, I'm going to conclude this broadcast. I will finish this tomorrow with part 2. With that all being said, I wish you all love, peace, and prosperity. And I hope to see you all right back in the chat, because I'm coming right back in the next 5 minutes for another live broadcast. And this is a story about a 12-year-old child, a black child from Atlanta, who had gone missing. And then the family or the police or someone found his body. And someone sent me this and asked me to push the story, so I definitely will, because this is not being all over mainstream media like it should. But this child was found shot to death, okay? In Atlanta, found shot to death after being missing for a couple of days or so. This is a 12-year-old black child by the name of David Mack. So I'm going to be talking about that when I come back, or shall I say when I come black, okay? So thank you all for tuning in once again. Be sure to like and share this video. Also, make sure that you subscribe to the channels if you have not done so. Don't forget to follow the Queen on Instagram at Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur. Also at divine_goddess_27 on Twitter at dgoddess27, and on Patreon at Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur. All right. So until next time, family, I will talk to you all again soon.